Greetings, fellow moviegoers, and welcome to Movie Central, the place to talk about movies, TV shows based on movies, toys based on movies, games based on movies, and rides based on movies. I'm your host, Mr. CCS, and this is my pet gorilla, George. Welcome back to my retrospective on Star Wars The Clone Wars. Let's get into a bit of history before I give my thoughts on each of the 6 seasons. The first thing released in regards to the series was that horrible movie released in the summer of 2008, and the show wouldn't be teased until August 31st. 21 days after the movie was released, until the first episode of the show was finally released on October 3rd of the same year. The show, unlike the movie, received generally more positive reviews. Before it skyrocketed in good reviews all of a sudden later, due to the writing, expansion to the lore, voice acting, and emotional depth. But seeing as how I hated the movie, what are my thoughts on the show? Well, it's time to find out. Even though this show has 7 seasons, I'm going to save the 7th season for its review. And today, we're going to tackle the first 6 seasons of Star Wars The Clone Wars. Let's get straight into it. After the event of the Battle of Geonosis in Star Wars Episode 2 Attack of the Clones, a 3-year-long lasting war took place between the Galactic Republic and the army of the Separatists. The Jedi Knights and their clone army fight against the droid army and their leaders. So that's a basic retelling of the show's synopsis, and it is very neat to see what happened between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. But before I talk about the seasons individually, I should probably talk about the main characters of the show, as well as the animation and music. So let's get to those aspects before I talk about the individual seasons and arcs. So as I said in my review for the movie, Anakin was my favorite character in the show. The reason why the writers wrote him so well and write him so much better in the show, rather than in the prequels, minus Revenge of the Sith, because he was mainly Darth Vader in that movie. As I said in my review for the movie, Matt Lanter did an incredible job playing the character, and he made the character of Anakin his own, making him not only my favorite character in the show, but also the best version of Anakin Skywalker in any media. Obi-Wan Kenobi was very funny in the movie, and in the show, he has the prequel version of Obi-Wan's personality, meaning he has the charisma that Ewan McGregor added to the character. There are times when the character is fleshed out so well in several episodes of the show, particularly in seasons 2, 4, and 5, but we'll get to there in a minute. Ahsoka Tano, while she was awful in the movie, this show made her the character we all know and love. She starts a lot like her movie version in the first 2 seasons and the first half of the 3rd season, which surprisingly I didn't mind because she had a lot of great moments in those parts of the show. But the second half of the 3rd season, she didn't just get good, she got really good. Especially in the second half of Season 3, Season 4, and especially Season 5, where she had some great writing. As for the clones, while they were mainly Arshigadu in the movie, the show had them, several of them at least, fleshed out and written extremely well. The clones the show mostly focuses on are Captain Rex, Commander Cody, Echo, and Fives. All of these clones are extremely well written and extremely well performed by D. Bradley Baker, who had a tough job of essentially playing the same character over and over again, but giving them distinct personalities. So yeah, those are the characters of the show that are main. And I won't get into the side characters, seeing as how there are several, but I'll mention the important ones when I talk about certain seasons. As for the animation, while the movie's animation looks stiff and looks unfinished, the show's animation looks surprisingly more expensive and much more smooth, and it only improved as the show went on. All of the characters have distinct designs. The background animation looks completely a part of the background and the animation as a whole, and unlike the movie, I just love how the style improved over the time. As for the music, Kevin Kiner returns to score the entire series. The best part about the score by far is when themes from the original movies like the main theme, the action theme, the Imperial March, and many others are included in little snippets, and the original score is also very well done. I like the darker music more with the deep voiced male choir, which is utilized a lot more in the later seasons of the show. Okay, now it's time to talk about the individual seasons and talk about some highlights and some downsides. So the first season of this show is the weakest of all the seasons by far. But that being said, it's still a very good season. As far as episodes and arcs go, there are some arcs and episodes that are not very good. For example, the two-parter with Ahsoka's droid was very forgettable and the animation for some reason looks cheap. And as far as individual episodes go, I'd say there are two truly awful episodes. For one, Dooku Captured. It's so bad, it's not even funny. I don't know why, but I guess I was just bored by it. I will admit that the second part of this two-parter was a bit better, but I don't recommend it that much because it featured the worst character in the saga. And with that segue, the worst episode of the season and the worst episode of the entire series is Bombad Jedi. I already expressed my hatred for Jar Jar Binks in my review of The Phantom Menace, but this episode has him at his absolute worst. He gets himself into a situation that is not hard to get into, but of course, we have to remember that George Lucas helped create this show. So of course, he probably begged to include Jar Jar in the show more than he should have. Come on, George Lucas, I named my gorilla after you, and you still treat your fans with blatant disrespect. But other than that, there are a lot of good episodes and arcs in this show for season 1. For one, I like the last 2 episodes of the Newt Gunray arc. I despised the first one, seeing as it was Bombad Jedi. I liked watching Ventress battle Ahsoka and Luminara Unduli in Cloak of Darkness, and I loved the episode Lair of Grievous, in which Grievous battled Kit Fisto, my favorite Jedi of all time, and Nadar Veb, and it shows how much of a cheat Grievous is when you fight him, something that Tartakovsky in Revenge of the Sith lightly touched on. The Blue Shadow Virus was pretty interesting for the most part, minus the episode with Jar Jar for obvious reasons. I also really liked the two-parter in which Anakin and Ahsoka and Ayla Secura went onto a planet to help out the Lurmen, the lemur-like species. The best arc of the season by far was the Ryloth arc, as it fleshed out how evil the Emperor is and it humanizes a lot of the clones, 2 in particular known as Waxer and Boyle. Other than that, there are 2 individual episodes I like it just a tad bit more. The first of which was an episode called The Hidden Enemy, which takes place before the movie, as the show made an odd choice to release the episodes out of order for some reason. The episode showcases a clone trooper portraying the Republic, and Cody, Anakin, Rex, and Obi-Wan have to flesh him out. There is also a cool duel with Ventress, too. The episode might have also been an inspiration for the famous mobile game Among Us, but now I'm just thinking out loud. But by far, my favorite episode of Season 1 is Rookies. This is the episode that introduced me to the show, and I'll never forget it. This episode focuses on the Domino Squad, a group of rookie clone troopers that are stuck with a boring assignment until the Separatists arrive and make things more interesting. This episode introduces 2 of my favorite clone troopers, Echo and Fives, the best clone troopers other than Captain Rex. The action sequences in this episode are some of the better action scenes in Season 1 and some of the best in the entire series. So, overall, Season 1 is pretty good, but it's still the weakest season in the entire show. I can't give the season anything but an 8.5 out of 10. It was almost there. Okay, Season 2 was a lot better than Season 1 right off the bat, but it's still one of the weaker seasons in the show. Second weakest behind the first season, I'd say. The only real episodes/arcs I didn't really like, none of the episodes were bad, mind you, just mediocre at worst, were Lightsaber Lost, which wasn't bad, but it wasn't that great either, seeing as how Ahsoka whines a lot more in this episode, and Cargo of Doom, which was not as good as the first part, Holocron Heist, which is one of the best episodes to feature Cad Bane, voiced by Corey Burton, who also voices Count Dooku in the show. The episode also featured Ahsoka wearing a weird outfit that she only wears in that one episode, which is why it's a lot weaker than the other episodes. But that being said, there are a lot of great episodes. I downright loved the first arc of Mandalore. It fleshes out Obi-Wan's character so well, introducing characters like Duchess Satine, Pre Vizsla, and the planet as a whole. It also features one of the most important deaths in the show, and also one of the funniest, I'd say, that of Tal Merrick, who was stabbed by Anakin. The Ahsoka arc, featuring the brainworms and Barriss Offee making her first appearance in the show, was also very good and pushed the idea that this show was made for children. Another very good episode was an episode called The Deserter, in which Rex finds a clone trooper who abandoned his duties and became a father, and it was great to see more humanized clone troopers. Children of the Force was also very good, and showcases Cad Bane kidnapping babies who are Force-sensitive under the command of the Emperor. My favorite episodes in the arc that is the best of Season 2, which is the Boba Fett arc. We see a young Boba Fett, voiced by Daniel Logan, who of course played young Boba Fett in Attack of the Clones as well, try to exact revenge on Mace Windu for killing his father, and we see him team up with several bounty hunters, including Aura Singh and Bossk, both of which are bounty hunters from the bigger franchise. I loved seeing Anakin getting a heart-to-heart with Mace Windu, as well as Ahsoka and Plo Koon working together, as they had a nice bond too. Hopefully, with the upcoming Tales of the Jedi show, we'll get to see their relationship fleshed out more. But overall, while Season 2 is still a weaker season, it is still a lot better than Season 1. I give the season as a whole a 9 out of 10. Now, I must say, the first half of this season is pretty good, but is on par with the writing of the first two seasons. The season starts out with a bang. However, as the Clone Trooper two-parter is excellent, fleshing out the Domino Squad, who appeared in Season 1, obviously. But then we have one episode featuring Jar Jar, and I have to say, it wasn't as bad as Bombad Jedi, but it still had one pointless moment with the pointless character. Come on. Overall, though, the first half of the season was pretty good, and it even gave Padme some great moments, too, with her two-parter, as well as an introduction to more characters on Mandalore, including one of the villains we'll see later on, that being Prime Minister Almec. But by episode 12 of Season 3, the show got incredible. For one, we have one of the best arcs in the entire show at the very beginning of this half, with the Night Sisters trilogy. This showcases Asajj Ventress being let go by Dooku and returning to her home planet of Dathomir, where the show gets surprisingly dark, as we get the introduction of a clan of dark-side witches known as the Night Sisters, led by Mother Talzin. The arc takes another big step with introducing Asajj Ventress, a real monster in regards to Dathomir, as he not only kills 2 Jedi as soon as his Sith training with Dooku begins, but also because of his physical stature. And it turns out that he is the brother of Darth Maul, who survived getting bisected in The Phantom Menace. I already mentioned that briefly in my review for that movie a long time ago, but the point is, he is reintroduced slowly in the best way possible, which will of course lead to another arc I will discuss in a minute. The 2 other great arcs in the season are the Mortis and Citadel arcs. Mortis focuses on the physical beings of the Force, the light side being the daughter, the dark side being the son, and the balance between the two of them being the father. It also reminds the audience that Anakin will fall to the dark side and become Darth Vader. And we even see Qui-Gon Jinn in this arc, still played by Liam Neeson from the movies. As for the Citadel, well, we get introduced to Tarkin, who of course was in the original trilogy and Rogue One, and we get to see another Jedi who was introduced to us in the prequels but never went anywhere with it. And that is Evan Piel. And he had one heck of a death scene as well, seeing as how he died in honor. I also love the fact that they used carbon freezing, something introduced in The Empire Strikes Back, to disguise themselves to save Piel. And also love how Ahsoka throws Plo Koon under the bus when Anakin finds out she's stowed away. This show is very funny at much times, by the way. We also get a pseudo-death scene for Echo, but I'll address that in the next review. The final arc of the season was not as good as the last 3 I just mentioned, but it is still pretty good. Ahsoka gets deserted onto a planet with younglings who were also lost and gave up on all hope, which is devastating, seeing as how Ahsoka never gave up on the Jedi, which is foreshadowing the horrifying events to happen in a later arc. We also get to see Chewbacca, who's mainly an original trilogy character, but he made his way into the prequels slowly but surely. So yeah, it's a good arc, but not as good as the 3 that came before it. So yeah, season 3 was a very strong entry to the show overall, despite that one mediocre episode, and pretty much everything improved, including the writing and animation. The season as a whole, for me, gets a 9.5 out of 10. It was a massive improvement over the previous 2 seasons by far, and one of the best seasons overall. Season 4, by far, is my favorite season of the entire series. It's the first of 2 seasons I gave a perfect score, and there are several reasons why. For one, I didn't hate a single episode or dislike a single episode in this season. They were all great, even the ones that had Jar Jar in them. I even tolerated those ones, weirdly. This is when the show focuses on darker story aspects, and it all starts with the first 4-parter of the show, excluding the movie, the Umbara arc. This is easily one of the best arcs in the entire show, as it not only focuses on the clones being more humanized, but also features one of the most pivotal side characters for the clones, and that character is General Pong Krell, voiced by Dave Fennoy. Krell is a very powerful Jedi, being of the Basilisk race. What I find most interesting about that is that he carries 2 double-bladed lightsabers. For the most part, the weapon is always signified to be rare by users. Darth Maul obviously had one, Bastila Shan had one, and obviously Savage Opress had one. But of course he did. But I don't think I've ever seen someone have 2 double-bladed lightsabers until now. So what is Krell's purpose? Well, his purpose is to help showcase how the clones are victims of the war as well, seeing as how Krell turned to the dark side, and he horrifyingly has the clones shoot each other to wipe them out faster. He also sent them on dangerous missions without resting, as he tried to tire them out to give the Separatists a bigger fighting chance. And Krell's story ends in one of the most satisfying deaths in the history of Star Wars. It's quick, but you're happy to see such a monster die after all the horrifying things he committed. There's a 3-parter and a single episode before the final 2 arcs, which are the best arcs in the season by far. The Kitavo arc was pretty fun to watch, seeing as how Anakin puts on a charismatic mask and tries to flirt with the Queen. I also like how Rex and Obi-Wan try to help free the slaves on the planet as well. So yeah, I did enjoy the arc, but not as much as the Umbara arc, or the other 2 arcs I'll mention soon. First, I want to go over one of the few episodes not a part of an arc, and that episode is called A Friend in Need. We had the character of Lux Bonteri, voiced by Jason Spizak, who was introduced in Season 3 but was fully fleshed out in this episode. I also love the fact that Ahsoka has feelings for him, and I'm glad to have seen it more fleshed out in the next season, but we'll get there in a minute. This episode also reintroduces the Mandalorians in the faction known as Death Watch, with the return of Pre Vizsla, as well as the introduction to Bo-Katan. The action in this episode is also very well done. Ahsoka vs. Pre Vizsla was a very well done lightsaber duel, and the speeder chase towards the end was also fun to watch. My god, this is just a great episode. But by far the last 8 episodes are the best in the season, for sure. First off, we have the Hardeen arc. Obi-Wan Kenobi and the Jedi Council devise a plan to stop an assassination for the Chancellor, so Kenobi fakes his death and disguises himself as the bounty hunter known as Rako Hardeen, and gets into the gang of bounty hunters, including Cad Bane and Embo, led by a vicious yet cowardly bounty hunter known as Moralo Evol. I'd say the best part about the arc is how Anakin reacts to the Council not telling him that Obi-Wan was really in disguise, and that shows that he starts to get a shaky relationship with the Council, which was fleshed out in Revenge of the Sith, and a future arc in the series. So overall, this was an amazing arc and a very good way to flesh out Obi-Wan's character, but it's still not the best arc in the season. Oh, no. That by far goes to Darth Maul Returns, which is my favorite arc in the entire series. While the first 2 episodes don't focus too much on the story and focuses on Ventress, which includes some of our best moments ever, the last 2 episodes, Brothers and Revenge, do, and they are great episodes, with Revenge being one of my favorite episodes of the show. It was downright scary to see Darth Maul in such a broken state, only for him to become a revenge-driven monster once again, and by far, in my opinion, the best villain in the show. His lightsaber duel with Obi-Wan was perfect, and it was great to see them battle each other for the first time since Obi-Wan bisected him in The Phantom Menace. So overall, Season 4 is perfect, and is the best season of the show by far. Easily one of my favorite TV seasons ever. Probably now in the top 5. Yeah, I love it that much. So, of course, the season gets a 10 out of 10. The best season in the entire show, by far. After season 4, I was excited. I expected so much from this next season. And I'll be honest, it should have been my favorite of the seasons. But there is one giant problem, but we'll get to that in a minute. First off, the premiere episode, Revival, is excellent. We get to see Darth Maul and Savage Opress team up with Hondo Ohnaka, a character introduced in the first season and is even now part of a newer project like Star Wars Galaxy's Edge and his group of pirates. This leads to a big battle with the lightsaber battle between Obi-Wan and fellow Jedi Adi Gallia and Darth Maul and Savage. This leads to Gallia being killed by Savage, and Savage getting his arm sliced off in a skirmish with Obi-Wan. It also is the last time we see Savage and Maul for a long time until later in the season. But that's okay, because we have 2 great arcs to focus on. First, we have the Onderon arc. This arc reintroduces Lux and introduces Saw Gerrera, who made an appearance in Rogue One, as well as his sister Steela. I also find it funny that Ahsoka gets jealous that Lux and Steela have a fling, seeing as how she has feelings for Lux, as I mentioned earlier. It was a very good way to flesh out her and Lux's bond established earlier. Another positive this episode has is the fact that it sets up the rebellion that we see in the original trilogy, which is also great to see. It's also great to see the instability in the government, which is why these rebels tried to fight back. So overall, it was a very good arc and one of the best arcs in the entire series. Then we have the one focusing on Padawans, and I loved the concept for this. For one, we finally see how Jedi construct our lightsabers, and we get a look at more fleshed out younglings. My personal favorite younglings were Gungi the Wookiee and Zat the Kit Fisto looking Jedi. I felt like they were the best written characters in the entire arc, but I grew to love the characters a lot, and I did like that droid that helped to build the lightsabers. Maybe because he was voiced by David Tennant, but I digress. Anyway, this arc I liked a lot too, but not as much as the previous arc. But I will say, it's so much better than the next arc. Holy crap, was this arc awful. Seriously, I hated the frog. I hated the pit droid, and I hated how bad the comedy was. Which is funny, seeing as how George Lucas claims these episodes to be his favorites. Oh my god, give me a break. The only good part was seeing Gregor, who is a clone trooper with amnesia, and he was written as well. But other than that, this arc is the worst in the entire series. It was that bad. And I really love Season 5 so much at this point, and this arc was so awful that I had to take a point off my final season of the score, or final score of the season. You know what I mean. But thankfully, we got a much better arc next. That was Maul's rule over Mandalore. We get to see the return of Darth Maul and Savage Opress after 13 long episodes. And it showcases him building his crime syndicate alongside Pre Vizsla. This arc also has some of the best moments the show has to offer, such as Darth Maul's duel with Pre Vizsla, the Battle of Mandalore with Obi-Wan donning the armor of a Mandalorian, Satine's heart-wrenching death at the hands of Darth Maul, and of course, who can forget the Emperor's duel with Darth Maul and Savage. Seriously, that scene is just so good. This is much better than the droid arc and by far one of the best arcs in the season. And the show as a whole. But the best arc in the season by far is The Wrong Jedi. This arc was excellent, as it showcased Ahsoka being wrongfully accused of bombing and several murders, leading to her becoming a criminal. The only people who are on her side are Anakin and Rex, as they've trusted her so much throughout the entirety of the show. It's also really cool to see Ahsoka go from her movie counterpart into a very emotional character. I told you she gets one of the best arcs in the entire series, and she becomes one of the best Star Wars characters. As for the twist that this episode holds, well, I won't spoil it for you. Just note you have to be a viewer of the bigger show before watching this arc. So yeah, while it's not perfect due to the droid episodes, Season 5 was still very good. But it could have been so much better. Which is why I'm giving Season 5 a 9 out of 10. After Disney purchased Lucasfilm in 2012, the cancellation of Star Wars The Clone Wars was soon to follow. Fans of the show were understandably upset as there were much more stories to tell, such as another Boba Fett arc focusing on how he became the top dog bounty hunter after Cad Bane, which I still consider canon, by the way, as well as an arc with Anakin and Obi-Wan on Utapau, and an arc with reject clone troopers. Only one of these storylines ended up being adapted later into the TV show, and one of them turned into comics and books, but other than that, the show was canceled too soon. But it did receive one last season on Netflix in 2014. So let's talk about it. Right off the bat, the season started with Promise, after the arc in regards to what causes Order 66 in the clones, which turns out to be an inhibitor chip that gives them forced programming to kill the Jedi, which does give the clones way more humanization in the prequels, and also makes Revenge of the Sith better than it already was, which is always nice. We could see a lot more of great moments from Fives as he struggles to find out what caused the fiasco, as the arc tragically ends with him dying and the Emperor's plan of Order 66 still being intact. This was one hell of an arc to open on, but unfortunately, the next arc wasn't as good. Sure, it was nice to see Clovis again. I'd say this arc isn't as impactful as the previous one, however, but it is much better than the two-parter known as The Disappeared. It's not bad, mind you, but it does feature Jar Jar in some of his absolute worst moments. For one, why on earth does he have a girlfriend? Also, how does Talzin get taken out that easily? The only real positive about the arc is how it leads into Son of Dathomir, which is a great comic, by the way. But other than that, I'd skip that arc altogether. The final arc of the season was pretty good, though, as it showcases Yoda going through some training of his own to learn how to become one with the Force. Several dark aspects are showcased here, like visions of Order 66, a dark side version of Yoda, and even Darth Bane, someone who hasn't been seen since the Expanded Universe books. So, yeah, it's a very good season minus the two-parter, but it's still not my favorite season. I'd say it's better than the first two seasons in Season 5, but not as good as Seasons 3, 4, and even 7. I'm going to give this one a 9.5 out of 10. Overall, the first 6 seasons of the show were good at worst and amazing at best. It's safe to say that the prequel era of Star Wars does have some value to it. I give the 6 seasons a watch with an open mind, and I know I will most definitely check the seasons out again with a more educated set of eyes. I give these seasons as a whole a 9 out of 10. Well, that's it for this part of the retrospective. I know it was longer than most of my reviews, but trust me, it's worth it. Feel free to leave your thoughts on the first 6 seasons of the show below, and tune in next week for the third and final part of this review, where I review the 7th and last season of the show. With that said, my name is Mr. CCS, this is Movie Central, and that, my friends, is a wrap. See you next week.